Hello there and welcome to part 2 of my 100-day drawing challenge for 2019. Okay, so last week in my last video I went through prompts 1 to 6 and unfortunately, just due to my lack of planning properly, we're going to be doing 8 prompts in this video. So we did 6 last week and then 8 this week. It's a little bit confusing. But there are a couple of prompts at the end of this video that I wanted to keep all together, which is why I decided to go for 8 in this one video. It's supposed to be 7 prompts per week, but it isn't quite working out like that, unfortunately. I do apologise, but anyway, let's just get in right where we left off. So, prompt number 7 on Saturday the 21st was primary colours. So for this one, I wanted to do some justice to the character that I drew last year. So I attempted to draw the same character, but then change some things up. I really didn't like my drawing last year particularly, so I really wanted to improve upon it and make it a little bit better as much as I possibly could. So I sketched out this character. I did a completely different pose because I really wanted it to look like I'd planned out the silhouette and planned out the composition beforehand, whereas last year I kind of just drew a character and there wasn't really much thought that went into it beyond that. So it is very similar to last year, but I just wanted to really accentuate it and really make all of the decisions look deliberate. So I gave her a very similar skin colour, very similar hair colour. I didn't have the exact colours, I don't think, that I used last year, so the colours aren't exactly the same, but I did my best to match them as accurately as I could. One thing that I'm really disappointed about is I attempted to do this colour wheel thing in the background, and the primary colours are like in a triangle shape on the wheel, so I wanted to do those 3 in the background, but it didn't really work out because I drew a circle in the background and tried to keep it as accurately in a circle shape as possible, but that meant that each of the different colours don't really stretch far enough beyond the character. So there's just kind of like a little bit of yellow behind her head and then these blue and red like wings coming down at the sides, and it looks a bit strange. So I'm a little bit disappointed in that because I feel like it's really not clear what I was going for, but I tried. And I kept everything else fairly similar. I kept the dress fairly similar to last year. I did the colour block thing with the yellow, red and blue. Oh, also I wanted to talk about, I did go for yellow, red and blue for this drawing for primary colours. I know there's a little bit of debate over what the primary colours really are, and I love the true primary colours, the cyan, magenta and yellow. I think it's a beautiful colour combination, but for this prompt I wanted to go classic yellow, blue and red. So that's what I did. I just wanted to. So that was the decision I made. And don't get me wrong, I love the cyan, magenta and yellow colour combination. And I very well might use it later in a different prompt. But for this particular prompt, I decided to go with red, blue and yellow. I think I've said those 3 colours in a different order each time I've said them, and I do apologise. The background is a little bit disappointing. It doesn't really come out as clearly as I would have liked it to. There's also a couple of other things I would change. A little bit of the anatomy didn't turn out quite as accurately as I was attempting to get it, but it's not that bad. And I gave it a good go. I'm pretty happy with it. It's okay. Prompt number 8 was adventurer. So this is one that I actually changed from last year. Last year the prompt was to create a new D&D character, and I was really struggling with that this year. I can't even really pinpoint why, but I was hugely uninspired for that particular prompt, and I decided to change it to a more generic adventurer prompt. So I'm sorry about that. I'm already messing up, but yeah, the problem is with drawing every day, if a prompt just isn't giving you any inspiration, you still have to try and get something down on the page. So I made the decision after staring at the page for a long time to change the prompt to a more generic adventurer prompt. And this drawing admittedly is one of the most boring ones I've done for this challenge so far. I don't dislike it because it was nice to be able to practice a different kind of pose, but at the same time, I feel like the silhouette's really closed up. I probably could have accentuated it a lot more and made it look a lot better. Also, the colour combination I think is okay, but it is a bit bland, so this one isn't the most exciting out of all of the ones that I've drawn. It was nice to just practice something a little bit different. This is one of those things where it's just nice to practice a pose that I don't always draw, and it's nice to keep on top of practicing those kind of things. Wow, it's really tipping it down with rain outside. I hope you can't hear that. Whoa. Dude, can you hear that? I'm gonna move my mic to the window. It just started, the heavens have opened. Gee, okay, I'm gonna try and keep doing this voiceover, but... Prompt number 9 was theatre, and admittedly, again, this one doesn't really fit the prompt particularly well. So... this was another one that I struggled with a little bit. I couldn't really think of what to do for theatre, and I did do a little bit of searching around on the internet for some inspiration and just some images that might help inform what I was going to draw, but I found very quickly that searching for theatre stuff, you kind of get a little bit of everything, and I kind of realised that modern theatre is just kind of anything. It can be anything. You can put on a production of pretty much anything. So I at that point I was like, well, what do I draw for this prompt? So admittedly this one doesn't really fit the prompt as well as some of my other drawings, but I don't hate it. I kind of just ended up drawing a sort of generic character in a dress holding a rose. I don't know, it was supposed to be sort of theatrical and I don't know, exaggerated, but yeah, admittedly this one doesn't fit the prompt. Like, I'm just gonna say that. It doesn't really scream theatre. But I don't hate it as a drawing. I wanted to use this particular pink colour for the dress because I think it's a really pretty colour. And I wanted to draw some flowers and some frills and stuff. I don't know. And I drew a little flower in her hand. It doesn't really look like a rose. It's pretty and I like it, so. I don't really have too much to say about this particular drawing. I knew that there were a couple of colours that I definitely wanted to use for this. Like I said, that pink colour for the dress. I decided to go with blonde for the hair just because I feel like I've been drawing a lot of people with brown hair recently, so I just wanted to change it up a little bit. I shaded it a little bit with pink because that's something I've been enjoying lately, is using a pink colour to shade yellow because I think it looks really pretty. And yeah, this one is another one that came to life a little bit more after I went in with coloured pencils and really gave it that little bit of extra shading. I also decided to add a little bit of a colour block in the background because I feel like a lot of my drawings recently have looked very plain, especially when they've been photographed. So I've been uploading all of these to Instagram as I go along, and I've really felt like a lot of my posts have been looking very bland. So I wanted to do this one a little bit bigger. I did that dress poofier and added the flowers and just kind of made it a little bit more detailed, I suppose, than my past couple of drawings have been. Like that adventurer prompt was really plain and the primary colours wasn't particularly detailed either, I wouldn't say. But then I also wanted to add that pink block in the background so that it would look a little bit better in thumbnail form on Instagram. So yeah, that's insight into my decision making, was just that I wanted it to look better on Instagram, to be really honest. Prompt number 10 was beach, and this is one of my favourites. I'm really glad that this came out well because I was really nervous for it, and I also felt like the previous couple of prompts that we've talked about in this video have admittedly not been my best work. I really wasn't feeling particularly inspired, but this one changed all of that. This is the turning point. So one thing that I started doing, and I don't know why I didn't think of it sooner, but one thing that I've started doing with this challenge is planning out what I'm going to draw in advance. So that might seem a little bit like cheating, but I've just been sketching some very basic little sketches in a separate sketchbook just to brainstorm ideas, and that in itself has helped me out so hugely with this challenge. I really felt like The primary colours prompt was like okay. I kind of just went with the flow with that one. The adventurer one and the theatre one, I sat and stared at the page for so long, not knowing what to draw, and having this feeling of like, well, I have to draw something because I have to film something today. It's a 100-day challenge. I can't just leave this until tomorrow. So I really struggled with those ones, but as soon as I started sketching out my ideas in advance, just tiny little sketches, I really felt like the drawings were improving so much more just because I had that little bit of extra wiggle room to change things around if I wasn't happy with them. So the beach prompt I sketched out the night before and just kind of sketched out a couple of different silhouettes and thought about what colours I wanted to use, and even something as simple as that really improved the end result, in my opinion. And I'm really proud of this one. Again, there's little mistakes here and there, but I'm much more proud of this one than I have been of a lot of my other drawings for this challenge so far. So for this one, I sketched out actually a very similar theme to last year. I really liked the idea of personifying a beach character rather than just drawing like a character on the beach. So yeah, I did this character whose skin is sand and her hair is water. So I sketched out a pretty simple silhouette, but I did it so that she's kind of facing the front, facing the camera, I suppose. Because last year when I did that prompt, she's kind of just sat sort of not looking anywhere, and it's a bit more of a closed up silhouette. So to contrast that, I just wanted to make it a little bit more clear and a little bit more like she's facing front and center, and did the water flowing behind her and like to either side. I just felt like this was a better silhouette and was a much better composition than my one from last year. So when colouring it, I chose a couple of different colours for the skin slash the dress, I guess. So I used a yellowish colour, I think I used Buttercup, and then a bit of a pinky colour to shade it because I like the way it looks. I just like shading yellow with pink sometimes. It gives it a nice little, gives it just a different tone and helps it to look a little bit more three-dimensional. And then I also used a couple of more brownish shades as well to kind of make up that sand colour, and I just went along and kind of mixed those, using the darker ones in the shadowy places and then using the brighter yellow for more of the highlights. Oh, I forgot completely to talk about the little crab friend. I decided to draw a little crab friend on her lap. I don't know why. I was just thinking, what more can I do for this beach prompt? We've got sand, we've got sea, we've got shells. I didn't really want to draw like trees or like umbrellas or like sand castles. You know, I just didn't really know how to fit that into the image. But I wanted to do some wildlife. I considered for a moment drawing fish in the hair because the hair like is water, so I wanted to do sea creatures in the hair, but I thought, you know, that's a bit ambitious for today. That's maybe something to think about another time. I think it would be really interesting and really cool to draw a character with water for hair who has all these sea creatures floating around and swimming around in there. I just think that would be so cute, but I'm not great at drawing creatures and like animals and stuff, and also not great at drawing water, so I felt that was a little bit ambitious for this particular illustration. But I did draw a little crab friend on her lap because I think it's incredibly cute, and the crab friend is like guarding her. He's like holding his claws up aggressively or like protectively. I really wasn't sure how to go about colouring water hair, but I did my best and I just kind of kept it fairly simple. I kept that kind of white line around the edge, and then I went in and used a light blue to colour each of the kind of drips of water, and then used an even darker blue the closer in to her body, because I assumed that there would be some shading there. That's the way I would shade hair normally. I didn't really know how to go about doing it as water, so I did my best, and I think it actually came out looking okay. And it looked really good after I added some white highlights to it too at the end. I ended up filming this pretty late, unfortunately, and it got pretty dark. And I think even some of the footage you've been seeing has been quite dark. I'll try and brighten it up in post as best I can, but the problem is sometimes I don't really have the opportunity to film earlier in the day, so it ends up getting dark. And on top of that, it's pretty dark all day because we're coming into autumn winter time. So it's gotten pretty dark, even at midday, so I apologise for all the dark footage, and I will try and brighten it up in post, but I don't think I managed to film the entire process, but I will show you a clip of the finished drawing. The next 4 prompts were the 4 elements, which was a series of prompts that I was really excited for. Aside from the very first element, which was Earth, I didn't look at the drawings from last year that I did while I was drawing these new ones, just because I wanted it to be my own unique ideas and my own updated ideas. I didn't really want to take too much influence from the drawings from last year, but I have the drawings from last year pulled up in front of me now so that I can do a little bit of comparison in the voiceover. So I did pre-plan a little bit of what I wanted to do for these 4 characters, because I knew that I wanted to do them to the best of my ability. So for Earth, I already knew what kind of colour palette I wanted to use, and it's very similar to last year. A lot of greens, some browns and stuff. But I just kind of made it a little bit more dramatic compared to last year's. I still like last year's, it's okay. And I do think that it's a more dynamic pose in a way, and if I'd have just tried to redraw that pose, it would have been a lot better this year, but I went with a more simple pose. I was really trying to think about how I could characterize these 4 elements. So for Earth, I was like, I didn't want it to be too strong, but I also didn't want it to be too gentle either, so I kind of gave it a bit of a mix, and I gave her kind of a strong pose, but it's also not that dynamic. It's kind of calm, and I like that for the Earth element. I struggled a little bit to come up with any ideas for her outfit. I had this idea in the back of my mind that I wanted to give her leaf wings, but then I thought that that didn't really make sense for Earth, and if I was gonna give Earth wings, was I gonna give air wings, because it would make more sense for air, and then I didn't know whether I wanted to give them all wings. But in the end I decided not to give her wings and instead gave her a leaf cape instead, and I'm not sure whether that comes across particularly well in the finished image, but I do like that there's kind of that block of green behind her, because I think it really just kind of adds that little bit of an extra thing to make the outfit look a little bit more interesting. Looking back on it now, I'm not super happy with the outfit. I think it looks kind of weird and haphazardly placed. I think it looked better in the sketch, and then when I ended up lining it turned out looking weird, so that's something I would definitely change. But I'm honestly not mad about the rest of it. I think that the pose looks okay. It is pretty simple, but I wanted it to be. And I really like the hair. I knew I wanted to make the hair even bigger than last year, because last year it was kind of basic, and I knew I wanted to do all the little flowers in there, so it ended up really cute. I also decided along the way at some point that I wanted to give each of the elements an animal friend, because I just thought it would be really cute to give them each a little animal and something to interact with, something to, I don't know, add to the pose or the composition, or I don't know whether I actually managed to do that, but I gave Earth a little snake friend. I don't know why I chose a snake. To be honest, it was mostly just because I enjoy drawing snakes, and I like snakes, and I think they're cute, so that's pretty much the reason why I drew a snake. You could probably think of a lot of different animals to apply for Earth, more so than the other 3, so yeah, I thought it turned out pretty cute. I did the snake sort of wrapped around her arm. I'm really happy with the colour palette too, and especially when I went in with pencils and added that little bit of green to the eyes, and I just think it makes it look really earthy and cute. So I'm really happy with how this one turned out. The only thing that I don't love the outfit. I think it could have been better, but I really don't like the sort of magic-y effect that I did with the glitter pens. I knew I wanted each of them to have that glitter element of this kind of little bit of magic, because I just can't resist from putting it in. It's so much fun. But I think I messed it up on the Earth one. It looks kind of haphazard and not very good, and I should have planned it out with pencil beforehand, but I just went in and freehanded it with the glitter pen, and I'm disappointed about that. But other than that, I still quite like this one, and my one from last year I think is a lot more dynamic, and she's got a more complicated pose, I suppose, but honestly, the outfit in the old one isn't any better from this year's, so overall I think that this year's is an improvement. Prompt number 12 was air, and the second element that I was working on. Now, I'm looking at last year's now, and I do really like it, but It is a lot more simple compared to what I went with this year. I do think that in a way I prefer the colour palette of last year's. I kept it very muted. So last year I gave her an incredibly pale skin colour and then used, I think, really, really light blue or a grey, I can't quite tell, to colour the hair and the kind of magic-y elements. I liked all the swirls and stuff in last year's, so I tried to incorporate that into this year's, and in a way I sort of prefer last year's. That's a little bit disappointing. What I kind of wish actually is that I'd kept the pose the same as last year, because I think I prefer it. But I was so desperate to do something different that I gave her a completely different pose. I don't hate the pose of this year's, it's okay, but I also think you can't quite tell what's going on. So originally when I did a little bit of a concept sketch for this one, the hand that's up in the air was supposed to be like flicking her hair up, or like flicking her hair over her shoulder, but I'm not sure you can really tell that that's what's going on. So she's sort of just holding her hand in the air, and then her other hand was supposed to be kind of dramatically poised downwards so that she's got this magic element that I can add in with the glitter pens. But it just kind of looks like she's resting her hand on her dress, because I gave her a bigger dress than in the concept sketch, so it didn't quite work out to plan. And now that I'm looking at the two side by side, I do think I prefer last year's in terms of the composition of it. I think that she looks more dramatic but also gentle, which is what I wanted for the air element. This year's is okay. It ended up being a lot more busy than maybe I would have liked. I think I was just so desperate to make it bigger and better. And I was like, more is more, you know, but maybe less is more. I think I just added too much. I don't hate it, but I just think in comparison to last year's, it's a little bit too overcomplicated. So I don't think it was super obvious, but I tried to make her dress like clouds, because I was just trying to think of things that I relate to air. Air's a pretty difficult kind of prompt to work with, because like for Earth, there's so many things that you associate with it. Like you have, you know, the physical ground, and then the nature, and then the animals, and then the leaves and the flowers, and there's like so many different things that you can work with, but air is kind of nothing. Like I couldn't physically draw air because it's not something that you can see, but I thought of things in the sky. I was thinking clouds and birds and that kind of thing, and that's where the inspiration came from to give her like a cloud dress, but you can't really tell that that's what it is. And I gave her a little bird friend on her head. I don't hate it, and I also don't hate the way that it's drawn. I tried my best to kind of make it cute and dramatic and all this kind of stuff, but that's a shame. I do kind of prefer last year's still for its simplicity. Oh well. Prompt number 13 was water, and this one I absolutely prefer to last year's. I think last year water was the weakest out of the four elements, because last year I just kind of drew a person, and she's wearing a dress that like doesn't really even fit her properly. Like I didn't know what to draw. I was desperate to make the dress a different silhouette from the others that I had drawn last year, and I didn't want to repeat the beach prompt and give her water hair, so I kind of gave her short hair, but it doesn't really work. To be honest, I hate last year's. The only thing that I can give it a positive for is the way that I drew the actual water swirling around her isn't that bad, considering I had absolutely no idea how to draw water. This year's I prefer greatly. Like I said, I planned out the pose in advance, and this one I think works pretty well. There are some things that I don't like about this and that I would love to improve, but on the whole, I like this one a whole lot better than I like last year's. I just wanted to make it big and swishy and cool, and I used a couple of different blues to colour it to give it a little bit of dimension, and I really like it. I struggled to think of something to do for her outfit, but I quite like the way it turned out. So it was inspired by like a waterfall, so I just did this long flowing kind of dress sort of to the knee, and then gave it all these little swirls at the bottom to indicate the, I don't know what that is, you know, when a waterfall, it kind of all splashes at the bottom and creates this kind of foam effect. I don't really know what it is, but I tried to recreate that, and I quite like it, and I think that this one with the sparkles as well looks good. So the things that I don't like are, one, I tried my absolute best with the face. I took a lot of time with it, but, and I've mentioned this before, I don't know whether anyone remembers, but I'm not good at drawing people facing that way, because I draw 80 to 90% of my characters all facing exactly the same way. So I tried to break the mold with this one and do it the other way, but I'm just not as practiced at getting the face proportions right when they're looking in the other direction. So I tried my absolute best, but the eyes still look a little wonky. Such a shame, but it's not that bad. I don't hate it. It's just something that kind of bugs me. I do like the pose and I like the hands. I'm not great at anatomy. I'm not great at drawing faces. I'm not great at colouring. In fact, I'm really bad at colouring. But hands are the one thing that I'm not that bad at, to be really honest. I always like the hands that I draw. I don't know whether that's just me being crazy, but I like the hands. So for this one, the animal that I decided to give her was a jellyfish, and I thought about this for a long while and I didn't know what to do. I would have liked to have done like a huge octopus or something, like with all its like flowing little tentacles, but I just didn't have enough time. It sounded like such a daunting task for me to try and do that and try and learn how to draw an octopus accurately, and I'd have to look at loads of reference images, and I'd already drawn the sketch of the figure at the point that I was trying to figure out what animal to give her. And it just would have required the entire composition to be changed, and I only had one day to do this, you know, and not even a day, you know, I have a couple of hours every day to try and produce something, so I ended up just going with a bit more simple jellyfish. I ummed and ahed about giving a manta ray or just some fish, or I don't know, I thought about a lot of different things. But the jellyfish ended up okay, and I think it works with the composition. The one thing that I am disappointed about is when I went in with the glitter pens at the end and added that sort of magic-y water effect that she's like swooshing over her head. It overlaid with the pink colour that I used for the jellyfish and made this muddy, gross colour wherever the two mixed. And that was kind of disappointing that I couldn't just go over it with glitter. And I tried to go around it as best I could, but those glitter pens are actually like really watery, so it's really difficult to get it incredibly accurate. So at that point I decided, well, I've already gone over the lines a little bit, so I'll add a little bit of shading sort of deliberately to make it look deliberate, and it didn't end up looking great. So the jellyfish ended up kind of messed up because of the glitter pen that went over it, but oh well. Overall, I still really like this. It's definitely an improvement from last year. And finally, prompt number 14 is fire. Now, I like this one a lot more compared to last year, but there's also some things that I like about last year's. Last year's, I went with a different style of sort of colouring the fire than I went with this year. The anatomy is certainly better. Last year, the anatomy just ended up not looking good. I went with a similar kind of idea for the face. I gave a really pointy eyes and the pointy sharp eyebrows too, and the colours overall are very similar. I mean, when you think of fire, I had to use bright yellow, bright orange, and I used a little bit of red too. So when I got to fire, I realised that I had given the other three elements an animal friend and that I had to give fire an animal friend. Now, I could have been a little bit more creative and just chosen any animal and made them a fire version of that animal, and even after I drew this, I was kind of enamoured with the idea of quite possibly doing a fire cat, a cat made of fire with a fire tail, and I think that would have been incredibly cute. But I went with a phoenix because that was the only animal I could think of at the time that was related to fire in some form. So I went with a phoenix, and I don't hate it, considering I'm not great at drawing birds. I think it ended up pretty okay. The character herself, I think, turned out pretty good. I kept her outfit pretty simple, and you might be able to see as I'm sketching this that I tried out a couple of different outfits and sketched a couple of different things. I gave her a skirt at first, but it just, for some reason, didn't look right, and it didn't seem to fit the idea of this character that I had in my head. So I ended up going with a different silhouette, and I think it works pretty well. I kept the pose simple for this one too, and in a weird way this is almost the calmest one. I don't know, I didn't want to make her like angry just because it was fire, because I feel like fire can be, you know, calm and peaceful, and I just feel like I don't know, I had this preconceived idea of what I wanted this character to be, and she has a very calm personality, so I kept her pretty calm, but also pretty strong. I definitely gave her like a stronger body type than the others. I kept her hair short and made it kind of flamey and wispy, which I like. And I decided to colour the hair orange and red instead of the yellow and orange sort of fire colours, because it was right up against that phoenix in the background. So I knew that I wanted to give a little bit of contrast between what's her hair and what's the phoenix. So I kept the hair red on the ends and then made the phoenix sort of yellow in the middle, and then blended it sort of outwards to a yellow and orange and red. And I think this one ended up really good. I'm actually really happy with this. When I finished it, I really liked it. Overall, I really like this one. It is a pretty simple pose. The composition is pretty simple, but I wanted to keep it simple, and I'm glad that I did, because I feel like the air prompt, unfortunately, I tried to add too many ideas and it ended up being too much. So I'm glad that I kept this one pretty simple, but then also added a lot of those flames in there. I'm really happy with this one, to be honest. So that's all of the prompts for this week. I really hope that you thought that they were okay. I did my best. I know that a couple of the prompts at the beginning of the week were not that great, and admittedly I wasn't particularly inspired, but some of the later ones I really enjoyed, actually. So if you made it to the end of the video, comment and let me know what element you relate to the most. That's a little cheesy. Sorry. But yeah, if you made it to the end of the video, please leave a little comment, because I appreciate every single one of them and it helps my channel, because I'm a very small channel. So comments help me out a lot. But anyway, that's all for this video. Thank you so much if you watched it. I appreciate you very greatly. And goodbye. Hopefully I'll see you next week, if I haven't absolutely collapsed from exhaustion from this challenge. Alright, bye.